All right, good afternoon, everybody. It's so wonderful to be back here at the Thinking Talmudist series. We are now, I think, in our 40th or 41st class since beginning this series of the Thinking Talmudist. We've been doing Talmud for many years already, but now that we have it in an organized groupings of Talmud study, it is really, really fantastic. Last week we discussed what is the mitzvah of a child towards their father, towards their parents. We spoke about the idea of respect, of reverence, of fear, and we're going to continue more about that today. Okay, so actually, when we left off last week, we mentioned the story of Dama ben Asina. Dama ben Asina was from Ashkelon, and he didn't want to wake up his father to sell the gems of the that was going to be needed, the gem that was needed for the breastplate, and he was a value of 800 gold coins. 600,000 gold dinars. Yeah, and he actually profited at the end. It was 800,000 gold dinars. That's unbelievable. Either way, he was rewarded that even though he didn't sell that gem, he ended up having a red heifer that was born to his flock, and he sold that instead to the temple. And he was then able to receive that reward, and that was he received that profit, and that was his reward for not waking up his father. The Gemara comments on this incident in the bottom of 31a in Tractate Kiddushin. Rav Chanina said, "Uma mi she'ena mitzvah v'osakach." Now, if you consider that one who performs a mitzvah of honoring their father, who is not commanded to do so because he's not Jewish, he doesn't have this obligation of honoring his father and mother, mitzvah ve'osa alachas kama v'kama, then imagine the reward that one who is commanded and fulfills the obligation of honoring their father and mother, what reward is in store for them. The Amar Rav Chanina said, Gadol mitzvah ve'osa imi she'enu mitzvah ve'osa. The reward for one who is commanded to do a mitzvah and performs it is far greater than one who is not commanded to do the mitzvah and does it anyway. I'll give you an example. So as parents, we've all asked our children to do certain tasks, right? And they get sluggish about it. I don't know, I didn't hear, I didn't think, I didn't know you need it now, or they just don't do their jobs. But what happens when your child's friend comes over to the house? They suddenly do the job very quickly. Right, when it's not even their job, right? Because that's the way it is. When you're not commanded to do something, you have a certain excitement to do it. But when you are commanded, it is more difficult. It is more difficult for the child who is commanded by their child to fulfill a specific task than for the child who is not commanded to do that task. Same thing with the Torah. Many non-Jews may say, "Oh, I don't understand Jewish people. Why don't they just fulfill the commandments?" Well, it's more difficult when you're commanded to do it than when you're not commanded to do it. Okay, and that our sages understand, and therefore our sages tell us that the reward that one will receive upon doing the mitzvahs that they are commanded to do will be far greater than the reward for someone who is not commanded and fulfills it as well. So a non-Jew who fulfills the commandment of honoring their father and mother will indeed be great. But for someone who is commanded and fulfills the commandment of their father and mother will be even greater. And now this week's Parsha, we mentioned this yesterday in the Chumash class at 9:30 a.m. Houston time. You're all welcome to join us at torchzoom.com. Shameless little plug there. But one of the things that we discussed was that we have the Ben Sorer Umore, that is one of the wayward son that we talk about in this week's Torah portion. And what's interesting about this is that the wayward son does something which it looks like he's heading in the wrong direction, right? he commits to he doesn't commit to do anything, but he shows signs, he shows indicators that he's going to head down the wrong path. What do? They kill him. Parents bring him. It has to be within a certain age range of 13 years old and 13 and 3 months. And if during that time he steals money from his parents, buys wine, buys meat, and eats it, right? Then he falls into that category, because we see there are indicators that he's going to head down a very bad path of thievery, of becoming a highway robber. He'll kill people for. We see there's indicators. Take him away, kill him. Now this never happened. Just by the way, just so you know, the Talmud says there never ever was a story of Ben Soramor. So what's the teaching? So what are our sages teaching us? Why does the Torah teach? So what are not sages? Hashem. What does Hashem teach us by putting this in the Torah, in this week's Torah portion of Kiddushin? Our sages tell us one of the many reasons that it's in the Torah is to teach us that if this is what's done to someone who's heading towards the wrong path, imagine what is waiting for someone who goes on the right path. Imagine someone who just thinks a good thought. You know what? Maybe this year I'll pray a little bit better. Maybe this year I'll learn a little bit better. And they just head towards that direction of goodness. Imagine the reward that is waiting for them. If this guy was heading in the direction of negative, is going to be held accountable in such a long way. Imagine someone who's heading in the right direction, how much more reward is waiting for them, right? And that's the indicator. That's the reason why it is in this week's Torah portion. I think it's such a powerful message for us to understand that good deeds are not only loved, they're going to be rewarded in such a magnificent way. Such a magnificent way. And it's worthwhile for us to do whatever we can, particularly before Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, but every day of the year, to try to think, how can today be better than yesterday? How can I enhance my day, my life, the life of the people around me, the quality of my spirituality every single day? And when a person does that, what it does is it sets them on that positive path, and that positive path will hopefully spring them towards a very, very good and rewarded life, not only in this world, but in the world to come as well. So let's continue now with what the Talmud says. The Talmud says, pursuant to the last point, the Gemara adds, Amar Rabbi Yosef. I'm sorry. Whoa, I'm sorry. Something popped up here. Okay, I apologize. Okay. So there's a lot of noise here, a lot of notifications. I don't know how to turn off these notifications. I try so many times to get them off. All right, I apologize. Pursuant to the last point, the Gemara adds, Amar Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef said, Meireish hava amina. At first, I used to say, Man dahavi amar li, that if someone would tell me halachic Rabbi Yehuda, that the halacha accords with the view of Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar Summa Pater Mina Mitzvos, who says, Rabbi Yehuda says that a blind person is exempt from observing the mitzvos. A blind person, or according to Rabbi Yehuda, is exempt from observing any mitzvahs of the Torah. Right? Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is recorded in Bava Kama 87a, in Tractate Bava Kama 87a. The sages disagree with Rabbi Yehuda, as inferred by the Gemara here. And in their view, a blind person is obligated to observe the mitzvahs. So, Avidna Yom Tavla Rabbanon, I would make a holiday for the rabbis, the Lo Have Mifkidna, because that would mean that I, since I am blind, am not commanded to perform the mitzvahs. Okay, this is what the Rabbi Yosef said. And yet I performed the mitzvahs, even though I'm not commanded to, according to Rabbi Yehuda, because I'm blind, right? But because I still observe it, it would have been a great day for me, right? But now that I've heard what you just quoted previously, just here in the Gemara, that someone who is commanded to fulfill a mitzvah is on a higher level and gets greater reward than one who's not commanded to do the mitzvah. He says, so that the reward for one who performs the mitzvah, having been commanded to do so, is greater than one who performs mitzvah without having been commanded to do so. Adarab, on the contrary, Manda Amr Li the Ein Halacha Rabbi Yehuda, if someone would tell me that the halacha does not accord to the view of Rav Yehuda of Vidna Yom Tavla Rabbanon, then I would make a great holiday for the rabbis. I would make a great celebration. That is to say, if someone would tell me that the halacha does not follow the view of Rav Yehuda, but it follows the view of the sages who hold that a blind person is obligated to perform the mitzvahs, I would celebrate greatly. Why? Because one who performs mitzvahs receives more reward if they are obligated than one who is exempt from doing the mitzvahs. And because he was blind, you would think, right? According to Rav Yehuda, he's not obligated to perform mitzvahs. According to the sages, he is obligated, and there's no exemption that because he's blind, he doesn't have to fulfill mitzvahs. So what does he want, Rabbi Yossi? He wants more reward. He says, I'm fulfilling the mitzvahs even though I can't see, even though I'm blind. According to Rabbi Yehuda, that would be less reward. According to the sages, that would be great reward. So please tell me that if the opinion is according to the rabbis, so that way I can get a greater reward. Okay? That was Rabbi Yossi. Says another incident. So now we go back to the story of Dama ben Asina, who was the son of Dama ben Asina, who is the Gentile who taught the sages about honoring your father and mother. Right? I just want to say that, Bruce, it's great to see you. It's great to see you. Okay? It makes me so happy to see you. And all of us, I think everyone's nodding their heads. Yes. Really
as my revered father would say, it's great to be seen.
Oh, and God willing, you'll be seen for 120 years of good health, of success, of happiness. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so here's the Gemara now continues the incident involving Dama ben Asina. Ki also Rav Dimi Omar, when Rav Dimi came to Babylonia from Eretz Yisrael, right from the land of Israel, he said, Pam achas hayolavush sirkon shel zav. It once happened that Dama ben Asina, this non-Jew who we talked about, that got rewarded for honoring his father and mother, right? So he was once dressed with a gold embroidered silk cloth. And sitting among the nobles of Rome. Uvasa imo, and his mother came, v'korato mimeno, and ripped it off of him. Ripped this silk robe off of him. V'tapcha lo es rosho, and hit him in the head. V'yarkolo befanov, and spat in his face. V'lo hichlima, and yet he did not shame her. Another teaching of the mitzvah of honoring parents. Tana Avimi B'Reider Avud. Avimi, the son of Rabbi Avo, taught. Yesh machi la'aviv pisyone. One can feed his father a pisyon bird. It's a type of bird, I guess, right? V'tordom in olam. And this act can drive him from the world, mean remove him from the world. V'yesh matchino b'rechaim. And one can make his father grind with a millstone. And this act can bring him to the life of the world to come. 1 second. One gives him a fine bird. One gives him a ground bird. Which one is better? The fine one. Yet this one gets purgatory, right? And this one gets a long life and gets reward in the world to come. How does that make sense, right? Our commentaries explain here. This fatty bird was a delicacy from the family of Slav that fell for the Jews in the wilderness. Aruch, however, defines it as a pheasant. Even though the son served his father a delicious repast, he will be punished if he does so with obvious resentment. So it's all, according to Rashi, if he doesn't do it with a full heart, he does it with resentment, he doesn't do it with a graciousness, with a kindness, it's not rewarded that he gave such a fine steak or whatever it is, delicacy to his parents. If he doesn't do it with a kind heart, if he doesn't do it with love, it doesn't count. However, the other who gives a more simple food to his parent, but gives it with, here he says, if the son honors his father by encouraging, comforting words, gently convincing him that his efforts is needed for their livelihood, the son will be rewarded, right? Rashi cites Yerushalmi, the commentary says over here, which records incidents that illustrate both parts of Avini's statement. A son customarily fed his father pisyon birds. Once the father asked his son how he could afford to do so. The son answered him, "Old man, what do you care? Chew and eat." By so reacting, the son demonstrated that caring for his father was burdensome to him. Another man who worked at a mill had an elderly father. One day, the king drafted the father to work. The son told his aging parent, "Father, you work here on the millstone, and I shall go in your stead to the king's service, which is of indeterminate duration. Duration." So he said, "You stay here with my millstone. You do the easier work. I'll do the hard work in your stead." Okay, and that's what our sages are telling us. Very interesting that if you look at, and we gave this example before, but if you look at the story that we're talking about here of Dama ben Asina, where Dama ben Asina did not wake up his father for that key to sell the right. Imagine that happened to you, Dave. Okay, Dave. Okay, your daughter is standing at your front door, right, with someone who's there. You're sleeping, and someone says, "Listen, I need to get financing from Ascentium Capital. Okay, I want to sign a $85 million loan, right? And I'm ready to sign. All I need is the documents. All I need." And your daughter says, "I'm sorry, my father's sleeping. I cannot help you." All right, what would you do when you woke up and she tells you, "Dad, guess what? This guy was ready to sign an $85 million loan, and I told him absolutely not. My father is sleeping." What would you do to her?
I don't think she'd be around me much longer.
Probably point blank range, right?
Yeah.
Right? And not kisses point blank range. It would probably be something else, right? And here we're saying, wow, look at Dama ben Asina, his father. He gave up 800,000 gold coins of profit for what? Not to wake up his father. And we say, wow, let's celebrate this individual. Let's learn what honoring our father and mother is. So this is where the Talmud explains it all depends on the father and it depends on the child's intention. Okay? There are parents who under any circumstances do not want to be woken up. And there are other parents who would say, "Oh, money, wake me up. Of course I want to be woken up." Well, it depends on who the father is. And the Talmud is bringing an extreme case where this child understood that the proper honor for his father was not to wake him up. And that's why he was rewarded. Because he knew, my father doesn't want to be woken up for any money in the world. And therefore, the mitzvah that I have of honoring my father and mother is not to wake him up. For a different parent, it might be totally different. And that's why it's incumbent upon every child to know their parent and to understand, my parent wants me to wake them, or my parent does not want me to wake them. My parent wants me to stand for them. You know, the mitzvah of honoring your father and mother includes standing up when they walk into the room, tying their shoes for them, feeding them, dressing them, helping them, everything you can possibly imagine. But what's if a parent says, no, listen, don't embarrass me by feeding me and standing up for me? So then you have to know what your parents are, what your parents, what is the proper respect and what they appreciate and what they expect. Okay? And that is unique to every individual. It's unique to every single father and unique to every single mother and every single child. Every single child needs to know, my parent wants this or doesn't want this, and understand them. Okay? So here, let's continue. Any questions?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Sure. Go for it, Ed.
Okay. My daughter does not want my wife going to work because of this COVID thing. My wife, her desire is to go to work as she gets out of the house and she likes it and she's not afraid of it. And they've gotten into severe arguments. But my understanding is that my daughter is doing this because how much she loves her mother and she's honoring her by not wanting her to risk her health, even though it's against her wishes, and they've gotten severe arguments. What's How is she honoring her mother by getting into this argument?
So my answer would be like this. I think the goodwill of your daughter to persuade her mother that she should not go to work is very honorable and but if the mother wants to go to work, that's her prerogative. And if the mother feels that for her mental health, for her stability, for her sanity, she doesn't want to stay at home with Ed all day. I mean, she's got to get out. Give me my space. You know what I mean? And then so for the daughter to get upset or to get angry about it would be inappropriate, even though it comes from the kindest of heart, right? But it would be inappropriate to argue and fight with the mother when that's what the mother's wishes are, right? Notwithstanding the health challenge, and you have to make sure that it is not, a serious danger for the mother, but still it has to be with proper respect and dignity for the mother's wishes.
Okay.
Now, and this is a big challenge, if a parent has dementia, or if a parent has other types of illnesses where they don't know where they are, don't know what they are, and you want to lie to the parent, and it's a whole different thing, because you're going to say, they say, what time is it? And you say, no, it's bedtime now, right? To just tell the parent, they just go to sleep now, right? Because if someone is dealing with other types of issues, you have to be careful and ask a local bona fide rabbi to know what the right thing to do is, whether or not you can mislead them for their own benefit, right? Like to tell them, no, what are you talking about? The governor said that you're not allowed to leave your home, right? So you say that to someone who's facing those challenges just to protect them. It's a big question whether or not you're allowed to do one sin for another mitzvah, to distance yourself from falsehood, so that you save their life and protect them from danger. You have to understand the ramifications of each side and do what is appropriate. But that you have to ask in case by case. In this situation, my answer would be that your daughter should give her opinion and respect your wife's desire. Anybody disagree with me here? Bruce, come on. Get out of your shell.
Okay.
I agree with you completely. I had to face that situation with my father, who was a child prodigy genius who was going through dementia when he was approaching 98.
Wow.
And what I did was I never lied to him. Instead, I explained to him with gentle love why he was incorrect in what he was thinking. And he always accepted it and felt calmer. Yet other people would lie to him. I could never bring myself to lie to him. It just depends upon how receptive they are. I had to remind him that I've always been honest with him, always. And then I said, because of that, and understand that what I'm getting ready to tell you is this. And it was very challenging,
right,
to say the least.
Yeah, look, I think you lose out by caring so much, Ed. And this is back to your question. I think a child loses out on the mitzvah of honoring their father or mother by having this confrontation and fighting, so to speak, for the benefit of the mother. Like if your real purpose is for the sake of your parent, then it should be with honor, it should be with respect, and it shouldn't be with a lack thereof.
Yeah. Actually, my daughter is very calm and reasoned when she talks to her, and it's my wife who gets angry and yells.
Okay, so then there's no question that your daughter needs to ensure that she doesn't make your wife upset.
Yeah, okay.
All right, there's no question.
Rabbi.
Yes, Dave.
Okay, so my father comes to me and he says to me, okay, Dave, let's go rob a bank.
Right.
I say to him, no, I can't do that. I'm not going to rob a bank.
Right.
And he goes out and does it anyway. All right.
Okay.
Police come to my house and they say, do you know anything about this robbery? What is your responsibility there?
How much did he steal?
Whatever. Okay, let's say he stole $3,000.
$3,000 put him in prison. So little?
What is my responsibility?
He deserves to go to prison for $3,000.
Is my responsibility to rat him out? Is my responsibility to lie? which is
Right.
what is my
I'll
responsibility?
tell you like this. It's touching on a different question, really. That is a little bit different. Okay. Do you have to listen to your father, honor your father and mother when it is going
No.
against God? Right. So then for sure not. You do not have to listen to your father. If your father tells you, I want you to drive to my house or drive me on Shabbos to this and this place, you're not obligated to do that. In fact, you're obligated not to do that and to disobey his command and listen to Hashem. Hashem says not to do it, and your father says to do it. You listen to Hashem before you listen to, over listening to your parents who tells you to go against Hashem, right? But here, are you obligated to rat him out? It's a good question. Probably not. I didn't think about it. I didn't want to have enough time to think about it, through it, and understand the full Talmudic background to it. But there are a couple of components here. The first component is, are you allowed to give information that you don't know to be certain?
The other one was Damon.
What's that?
Who said something?
I said you don't know for certain that he did that, right? Even though he tells you, I just robbed the bank, he might just say that as a cover so that you don't know that he has a private stash of cash, right? And you should
Didn't he
think
have a radio? I'm going to go up to the buck.
All right. So because you don't know for a fact that he did it, I don't think you can share any information. Now, you can say, listen, my father told me that we should go rob a bank together, and I said I wasn't going to. I don't know if he did or if he didn't. I wasn't there, so I don't know if he actually did that. But I think that there's no question. There's no question that we should do everything we can to persuade our father not to do it, particularly not for $3,000. That's like,
Well, okay, he did it for $1
You
million.
think of-
I don't know.
No, I'm going to say this very sarcastically, but you think of Ponzi, Mr. Ponzi, that got the Ponzi scheme named after him. What was it on a couple of $1 million? I mean, look at if you're already calling it a name, call it after Bernie Madoff.
It's a Madoff.
For 60 billion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, a few million versus 60. But either way, it's a disgrace that a Jewish person would do that. We're the people who are supposed to be an example for the world, and not an example of doing good, not an example of doing bad. God forbid. All right, let's continue here in the Talmud. So my answer to you, David, is I don't know. That's the bottom line. I don't know I don't have an answer. I will have to look into it and get back.
That's my answer to everything. I don't know. Ask my wife.
That's a good answer.
You think I'm lying? I'm not lying. That's what I do. Go ask Sue.
All right, let's continue. The Gemara cites how Avimi actually honored his father. Amar Rabavo. Rabavo said, Kigon Avimi brei kiyem mitzvahs kibud. Someone like Avimi, my son, fulfilled the mitzvah of honoring one's father. Chamisha bonei samchei havilela Avimi b'chaye aviv. Avimi had 5 ordained sons during the life of his father Rabavo. Nevertheless, whenever Rabavohu came calling at the door, Avimi himself would run and open the door for him. Calling, yes, I shall open it. Yes, I shall open it. Until he arrived at the door. Yom echad amarle ashkiyan maya. One day, Rabavo told Avimi, his son, get us water to drink. Adaise le nimne. While Avimi was bringing the water, Rabavo fell asleep. So he said, can you give me some water? He ran to the other room to get the water. He comes back and he sees his father is sleeping. Right? Gochin koi ale adi itar. Avimi bent over and waited for him to awake. Astaya milse vidorish Avimi mizmor asa. While he was waiting, a divine inspiration came to him, and Avimi expounded a song of Asaph. What is this? This is the beginning of Psalm 79. As a reward for honoring his father, Avimi was accorded understanding of this psalm, which until that time was unable to be understood. Right? It was hidden, the understanding of this psalm. But because he fulfilled this mitzvah so beautifully, he got a special reward that he was able to understand Psalm 79 of King David's writings. The Gemara addresses another question regarding the mitzvah of honoring one's parents. Amar le Rabbi Yaakov bar Avahu le'Abaye. Rabbi Yaakov, the son of Avahu, inquired of Abaye. Again, all the Tanaic sages. Kigon ano de'ad de'asina mi beirav, in a situation such as my own, where before I return from the study hall, Abba madli le kasa, v'ima mozgali. My father prepares a cup of water for me, and my mother mixes the wine for me. Right? She aerates it. Heichi iavid. What should I do that my parents are serving me in such a way? Omar le, Abaye answered him, Me'imoch kabil u'ma'avuch lo tekabil. Accept service from your mother, but from your father do not accept it. Kivon dvar Torah hu chol shadaite. For since he is a Torah scholar, he will become distressed if you allow him to serve you. Okay? Because the father was a Torah scholar, he will become distressed if he ends up serving you. Okay? Over here, Rav Yaakov explained that he was the beloved of his father and precious to his mother, and so they showered him with such attentions. Yet he wondered whether in accepting these favors he violated the commandment of to honor one's parents. For by allowing his mother to satisfy his desires to serve him, Rabbi Yaakov said, in fact, honoring her, right, that by accepting from his mother would be honoring her that he accepted from her. But by his father, Rabbi Yaakov must be concerned that his father may perhaps regret having served his son, and may thus suffer from the affront to his dignity. If the father strenuously insists upon performing this service, the son may accept it, right? But we see how careful we need to be with the honor of our father and mother, okay? So it's an interesting thing that sometimes we have to understand that it's an honor for someone to be honoring you. Right? It's, for example, we learned this when we talked about the act of kindness. That sometimes the kindness is allowing someone to do kindness to you, for you. Right? So here, the honor would be to the mother that you accepted her kindness and her gesture. Okay? Everyone good? Okay. The Gemara now continues. The Gemara records the extent to which that one Tana honored his mother. Rabbi Tarfon, you heard of Rabbi Tarfon, one of the great Tanaic sages. Rabbi Tarfon, Habale Ha-hi Ima. Rabbi Tarfon had this elderly mother whom he treated with such respect. The Chol Emas Tahavis Boyes Lemesak Lefuria, that whenever she wanted to climb into bed, Gochin Visalik Le, he would bend down and she would climb onto him into bed. And whenever she descended from bed, she would descend on him to reach the floor. It means he would bow down, right, so that his mother can stand on him to go into bed, and he would bow down so his mother can stand on him to get off the bed.
Hello.
All right? Then the Talmud now continues and says, also v'komishtabach be'midrasha. Rav Tarfon came and lauded his own performance of the mitzvah to his colleagues in the study hall. They told him in response, you have not yet reached half of the honor one can bestow upon his parents. You haven't done enough. Klum zorko arniki bifanecho liyam V'lo ichlamta. Has your mother ever thrown a bag of money into the sea in your presence and you did not shame her? That would be proper honor. Proper honor would be that your mother does something so terrible, like throw a whole bag of water into the ocean, and you don't embarrass her, and you don't say a word. The Gemara relates another extraordinary performance of this mitzvah. Rabbi Yosef ki havishama kal kare deime. Whenever Rabbi Yosef heard the footsteps of his mother, Amar Eiku mikame shchina de asya. He would say, I shall stand before the divine presence, which is approaching. Every time he heard his mother's footsteps, he would stand up and say, here, I'm about to greet the presence of the Almighty, right? The divine presence. Right? The Gemara above stated that when a person honors his parents, God considers it himself as residing with the parents and as having also received honor from this child. So when we honor our parents properly, what we're doing is we're honoring the divine presence of the Almighty. So therefore he stood up. When he heard his mother coming, he's like, oh, let me stand up because the divine presence is coming. Because when someone has proper honor of their parents, it's as if they're honoring also the Almighty. It's a very beautiful idea. It's a very beautiful concept to understand. Now it's interesting that I want to share with you an amazing story of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who was one of the unbelievable Jerusalemite sages. He passed away, I believe it was in 1993 or 1994. I remember I was in yeshiva in Jerusalem. By his funeral, there were 250,000 people. The entire city of Jerusalem was closed down for his funeral. 250,000 people. And I remember they said that before he came to his home, before he walked into his own house, he would look in the mirror outside his house and he would fix his tie, he'd fix his jacket, make sure he's all clean, and he'd make sure his hat and his hair, everything was organized, and he'd fix his beard, make sure that he looked all prim and proper. And so his student asked him, he said, what's the big deal? You're walking into your house, you say hello to your wife, to your children. He says, no. I'm about to accept the presence of the Almighty. Why? The sage said, what do you mean? He says, because when there is peace in the home, the Almighty says, I want to be in that home as well. So he says, when I come home and I have such a home of peace between me and my wife, the presence is there as well. The presence of the Almighty. I want to greet the Almighty. Of course, he wasn't doing it only for the Almighty, but he was doing it also for his wife. To look proper. You look proper for her. You're looking proper for the Almighty. Right? It's another interesting halacha. The halacha says that before a man walks into the house, he has to knock. I mean, it's my house. I pay the mortgage. I pay the rent. I earn the income. No. It's her house. You have to knock before you walk in. There's another reason for it. Is because every woman wants to look beautiful for her husband. Right? And that extra minute can give a moment to prepare for her husband walking into the house. Right? We should all be at the level where we have that level of respect between a husband and a wife and a husband, where it means that to us. But not to startle a wife, the halacha says that a husband should knock on the door before walking into the home. So the Gemara now continues, and the Gemara says, okay, any questions? All right, terrific. The Gemara records an Amora, it was later after the Tanaim, Amora's feeling about the mitzvah of honoring one's parents. Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, Ashrei mi shelo chama'on. Happy is one who never saw his parents. What is this referring to? Since it is almost impossible to honor one's parents properly, a child will inevitably be punished on account of them. Right? So if a child, right, so Rabbi Yochanan was saying, the challenge of honoring our parents is so great to do it properly, it's better for a child perhaps to have never seen his parents, so he never can be in a situation where he didn't honor them appropriately enough. All right? That's what Rabbi Yochanan says. Rabbi Yochanan ki ibartu imo meis aviv. When Rabbi Yochanan's mother was carrying him, his father died. Yoladet So Mesa Imo, and as soon as he was born, his mother died. The Chen Abaye, and the same was true with Abaye. They never saw their parents. They were both orphaned, Rabbi Yochanan and Abaye. The Gemara objects to the statement about Abaye. It says, Eini, is it so that Abaye never saw either of his parents? Amar Abaye, Amar li Ein. Didn't we have a quote from Abaye that says, but he was known to say, my mother told me. Hence, Abaye's mother was living during his lifetime. So how can the Talmud say that Rabbi Yochanan didn't see his parents and neither did Abaye? So the Gemara answers, Ahu mar binte havoi. That woman that he quoted was actually his nurse. However, Abaye called her his mother because she raised him. Right? Really, really amazing. So I think there's another lesson that can be learned here. And that is that when one has someone who raises them, someone who has a very strong influence on them, right? The Talmud says that if you learn something from someone, a word of Torah from someone, you have to call them Rabbi. You have to call them your teacher, your master. You learn something from someone, you have to call them Rabbi. Right? Why? Because you have a whole debt of gratitude to them, because now your whole world vision, your whole perspective on life has changed. Right? So even more so, if someone raised you, even if they're not your biological father or mother, it is incumbent upon us to have the proper respect as if they were. And that's one of the things that we learn from Abaye. That even though it wasn't his mother, it was just the nurse who raised him, still he called her his mother out of respect because of the dedication and commitment she had to him. All right, so we're going to stop here, my dear friends. Thank you so much. It was magnificent being able to see all these beautiful faces and to learn together and have an amazing Shabbos. I look forward to seeing you 9 a.m. Sunday morning for the shofar blast. Really excited. One second, Dr. Rosenstock, do you blow shofar? I don't hear you. You're muted.
I can blow the shofar.
So maybe you blow for us on Sunday morning.
We'll see.
Sign on. We'll turn the camera to you, and
Okay.
we'll have you blow into the show. Blow the shofar.
You know, I did have one question. It seems
Yes,
to me,
please.
if you're obligated to do something like a mitzvah and you do it, you're doing it partially because you want to do it and you're obeying the mitzvah. If you just do it out of your heart, it wasn't really your job, you weren't commanded to do that. I don't know. I see that as just as equal in terms of maybe not seeking a reward particularly, but deserving recognition and reward. You just do it out of the kindness of your heart because, and you're not thinking that this is a particular Torah-itic mitzvah. I'm not sure that I would downgrade.
Right. No. There's a difference between doing it with intention and doing it without the intention. There's no question, right? But the Talmud says that even if someone does it without the proper intention, they still get the full reward for it. It means the intention doesn't mean that they're not obligated to it.
I understand the obligation, yes.
The obligation,
the Torah-itic obligation, but you can always abstract because you're supposed to be kind to your neighbor. That's a Torah-itic principle, and therefore you're doing it. Maybe you don't remember that particular mitzvah as it is Shekatu B'Torah, but still you're doing it. I can see that.
Yep. All right. Terrific. Thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Rosenstock.
Shabbat
Have an
shalom,
amazing,
Brian. Thank
have
you
an
for a great
amazing
class.
Shabbos, everybody. Thank you so much.
Rabbi.
Yes.